is the report?
Today's story is about passion, emotion, and why we should not underestimate someone in this life, no matter what. Sit tight, as what you're about to listen to is going to change your life. The vase hit the marble floor and exploded into 100 shards of glass, the sound cracking through the 50th floor boardroom like a gunshot. Minho stood over the wreckage, chest heaving, his $5,000 suit stretched tight across his shoulders. Behind him, 6 board members sat frozen, papers forgotten in their hands. "Where is the report?" he shouted, slamming his fist onto the mahogany table hard enough to rattle the water glasses. "If this merger collapses because some idiot lost a file, I will fire every single person in this building, starting with whoever's closest." Nobody moved. Nobody dared. In the corner, a woman in a gray uniform kept working. Her cleaning cart rolled silently across the floor, her hands steady as she wiped down a side table like the room wasn't on fire around her. Her name was Hannah, and she had spent 3 years learning how to be invisible in this building. Right now, invisibility was the only thing keeping her safe. Minho's eyes landed on her. Something about her calm made his rage worse. "You." He crossed the room in 4 strides. "Why are you still in here? Do you not understand what's happening? We are losing a $200 million merger." Hannah didn't look up. She reached toward the trash bin beside the desk, where a blue folder sat half buried under shredded paper, and pointed at it. Minho didn't follow her hand. He saw a maid pointing at garbage, and his mind filled in the rest. "Don't point at me like I'm stupid," he snapped, stepping into her space until she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I asked you a direct question. Answer me." Hannah's lips parted. Her throat worked. No sound came out. It never did, not since she was 19. But she tried anyway, because some part of her still believed that today, someone might wait long enough to notice. Minho didn't wait. "Unbelievable," he said, laughing without any humor in it. "You can't even give me a straight answer." "Mute, are you? Or just useless?" He turned to the security guard stationed by the door. "Get her out of my building. She's fired. I don't have time for people who can't speak when spoken to." The room went silent in a different way now, the kind of silence that comes from 12 people deciding all at once not to say anything. Hannah straightened her back. She didn't cry, didn't flinch, didn't beg. She set down her cloth, folded her hands, and gave Minho a bow so deep and so composed that it made him feel, for one disorienting second, like the smaller person in the room. Then she walked toward the glass doors, her cart abandoned behind her. As she reached for her bag, a small leather diary slipped from the side pocket of the cart and landed in the shadow beneath the desk. She didn't notice. She kept walking, out through the glass doors, down the hallway, out of the building that had just erased her in front of everyone who mattered. Minho didn't watch her go. He was already turning back to the board, already shouting about the missing file, already certain he'd won something. He hadn't. 2 hours later, the boardroom looked like a crime scene of ambition. Spilled coffee, crumpled printouts, a dead vase of flowers nobody had bothered to clean up because the woman who would have was gone. The board members had left one by one, their faces carefully blank, which was somehow worse than if they'd looked angry. His uncle, Director Park, was the last to go. He paused at the door, straightening his cufflinks with an oily kind of patience. "Minho," he said, "without that investor signature, your father's legacy walks out the door with it. The board is asking questions about whether you're fit for that chair." He smiled like he'd already decided the answer. "Get some rest. You look like you're falling apart." The door clicked shut behind him. Minho sat down at his desk and put his head in his hands. For the first time all day, there was nobody left to yell at, and the silence was worse than any of the shouting had been. That's when he saw it. The diary, wedged in the shadow near the desk leg, its leather cover worn soft from years of handling. "Even her trash is following me," he muttered and picked it up to throw it in the bin. Instead, his thumb caught the edge of the cover, and it fell open. July 30th. Today, he froze. He doesn't know his uncle met the rival CEO at 2 in the morning last night. "They talk in front of me like I don't exist because they think I can't hear anything if I can't speak. They think I'm furniture. The blue folder isn't lost. They took it. Minho's heart stopped, then slammed back to life. He flipped the page with shaking hands. There was a hand-drawn map, his own office, his own floor, with a red circle drawn tight around the ventilation duct in the server room. If he fires me today, I won't get the chance to tell him. I hope he finds this notebook instead. He's a harsh man, but I don't think his heart is cruel. I think it's just asleep. The words blurred slightly in front of him, and Minho realized, with something close to horror, that his eyes had gone hot. He had just fired the only person in that building who knew the truth, and she had known it was coming, and she'd stayed anyway. He needed to find her. He needed that folder. And he needed to know exactly how much more this small leather book was hiding from him. If you're already invested in finding out what Minho does next, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because what he finds in the rest of this diary is about to change everything. Minho didn't remember standing up. One moment he was staring at the red circle drawn around the ventilation duct, and the next he was in the elevator, diary clutched in one hand, jabbing the button for the ground floor with the other. He needed the security footage. He needed her address. He needed 5 minutes to undo the last 2 hours of his life. "Get me HR," he barked at his assistant the second the doors opened. "Now." Jiwoo, his assistant, practically ran to keep up with him. "Sir, HR closed 20 minutes ago, but I can pull the employee file from the system if—" "Do it, now. Her name is Hana, cleaning staff, 3rd floor rotation." Jiwoo's fingers flew across her tablet as they walked. "Found her. Kim Hana. Address on file is—" She hesitated. "Sir, this address doesn't look current. There's a note here, temporary registration, shelter housing." Minho stopped walking. "She lives in a shelter?" "It says she requested flexible scheduling 6 months ago. Medical appointments. That's all the system has." He looked down at the diary again, at the map, at the small, careful handwriting that had somehow known more about his own company than he did. Guilt sat heavy and unfamiliar in his chest, an emotion he wasn't used to feeling, let alone naming. "Pull the car around," he said. "I'm going to that shelter." "Sir, what about the merger?" "Director Park called twice while you—" "The merger can wait." The words surprised him even as he said them. 2 hours ago, nothing could have waited. "Get the car." The shelter was 30 minutes across town. A squat gray building with peeling paint and a hand-lettered sign that had clearly been repainted more than once by volunteers who cared more than they had budget for. Minho stood outside it in his tailored suit, feeling, for the first time in years, completely out of place. A woman at the front desk looked up when he walked in, her expression turning wary the moment she registered the suit, the watch, the whole unmistakable shape of money. "I'm looking for someone," Minho said. "Kim Hana. She may have come in tonight." "We don't give out information about residents," the woman said flatly. "Please." He hadn't said please to anyone in longer than he could remember. "I did something today. Something I need to fix. She's not in trouble. I am." The woman studied him for a long moment, then something in his face must have convinced her, because she softened. "She's not here yet tonight. She usually comes in around 8. She paused. "You're the boss, aren't you? The one from the office building." Minho's stomach dropped. "You know her?" "Everyone here knows Hana. She volunteers 3 nights a week reading to the kids. Can't speak, but she's got the most patient hands you've ever seen. Teaches them sign language, drawing, whatever gets through." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "She came in about an hour ago, actually. Sat in the corner and didn't say a word. Well, she never does. But she looked worse than usual." Minho felt the guilt tighten into something sharper. "Is she still here?" "She left 10 minutes before you walked in. Wrote on her little notepad that she had somewhere to be." He was already moving toward the door when the woman called after him. "Wait, before you go running off, you should know something about her, if you're going to go find her. She wasn't always like this. Mute, I mean." The woman's voice dropped. "There was an accident years back. A fire, I heard. She doesn't talk about it, obviously, but one of the other volunteers said she saved a kid from it, paid for it with her voice." Minho stood frozen in the doorway. In his hand, the diary felt heavier than it had all night. "I lost my voice to save a life. I would do it again." He hadn't understood the words when he read them an hour ago. Now they landed like a blow to the chest. He found her 2 blocks away, sitting on a bus stop bench under a flickering street lamp, her cleaning uniform replaced by a worn gray coat, her bag clutched in her lap like it held everything she owned, which he realized with a fresh wave of shame it probably did. She saw him coming and stood immediately, her whole body going rigid, like she was bracing to be yelled at again. "Wait," Minho said, holding up both hands, the diary visible in one of them. "Please, I'm not here to fire you again. I already did that. I know." Hana's eyes went to the diary, and something flickered across her face. Recognition, then panic, then a kind of exposed vulnerability that made Minho feel like he was intruding on something sacred. "I read it," he admitted. "I wasn't supposed to, I know that. But I'm glad I did, because you tried to warn me about my uncle, and I threw you out before you could." He took a step closer, softer this time. "The blue folder. It's not lost, is it? Someone took it." Hana nodded once, slow and careful. "Do you know who?" She hesitated, then reached into her bag with shaking hands and pulled out her small notepad, the one she used when the diary wasn't enough, when she needed to say something fast. She wrote quickly, block letters pressed hard into the paper, and held it up. "Your uncle's assistant, server room, 10 p.m. tonight." Minho checked his watch. 40 minutes. "Come with me," he said. "Please, I can't do this without you, and I definitely don't deserve your help after today. But I'm asking anyway." Hana looked at him for a long moment, the man who'd called her stupid, who'd humiliated her in front of a room full of people, who was now standing in the cold asking for the one thing she had left to give him, trust. She nodded. "If you want to see whether Minho catches the thief red-handed, and what happens when he finally learns the full truth about who Hana really is, smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me where you think this story is headed, and stay tuned, because the final part is about to change everything you thought you knew." The car ride back to the office was silent, except for the hum of the engine, but it wasn't an empty silence. Minho kept glancing at Hana in the passenger seat, at the way her hands sat folded tight in her lap, at the small notepad she held like a lifeline. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he finally asked. "About my uncle, about any of it." Hana pulled out the notepad and wrote, her handwriting quick and sure. "Tried. You never let me finish a sentence." Minho winced. It was true, and worse, it was fair. He'd spent 3 years walking past her like she was part of the furniture, exactly like the diary said, and it had never once occurred to him to wonder what she might have seen from that vantage point. The meetings, the whispered calls, the small betrayals that happened in corners when everyone assumed the cleaning woman wasn't paying attention. "I'm going to let you finish this one," he said. "Whatever it takes." They reached the office building at 9:50. Minho badged them both into the elevator, and they rode up in tense quiet, the numbers climbing toward the server room floor. When the doors opened, he held a hand out, motioning for Hana to stay back, but she shook her head firmly and stepped out beside him anyway. She wasn't hiding from this. Not anymore. They found the server room door propped open with a fire extinguisher. Inside, a man in a dark jacket was crouched at the base of the ventilation duct, exactly where the diary's map had marked it, carefully sliding a blue folder out from behind a loose panel. "That's far enough," Minho said. The man spun around, and Minho recognized him instantly. Director Park's personal assistant, a quiet, forgettable man named Choi, who'd been in and out of board meetings for years without anyone giving him a second thought. "Mr. Choi?" Minho stepped further into the room, Hana just behind his shoulder. "I think you have something that belongs to me." Choi's eyes darted between them, calculating, then landed on Hana with a flash of recognition and disgust. "The mute girl told you? Nobody was supposed to." He stopped himself, but it was too late. The confession was already out. "So it was my uncle," Minho said quietly. "The whole time." "He's going to take this company whether you help me or not," Choi said, backing toward the door. "You should have stayed home tonight." "Security's already on their way up," Minho said, and it was true. Jiwoo had called them the moment the elevator doors closed. "You can wait here, or you can run and make it so much worse for yourself. Your choice." Choi didn't run. He sagged against the wall instead, the blue folder sliding from his hands onto the floor, and within minutes, 2 security guards had him by the arms. leading him out while he muttered something about following orders and not knowing it would go this far. Minho picked up the folder with hands that weren't quite steady. Inside was everything: the falsified merger documents, records of the late-night meeting with the rival CEO, proof that his uncle had been quietly selling out the company. Minho's father built, piece by piece, banking on Minho being too arrogant and too distracted to ever notice. He looked up at Hana. "You saved this company tonight. Not me. You." Hana shook her head and wrote on her notepad, holding it up so he could read it in the fluorescent light. "We saved it. Together." 3 days later, the boardroom looked nothing like it had the night of the shattered vase. The board was assembled, Director Park seated stiffly at the far end, his oily confidence gone, replaced by the pale look of a man who knew exactly what was coming. Minho stood at the head of the table and laid the blue folder down in front of everyone. "My uncle has been negotiating with our rival company behind this board's back for months. I have the documents, the dates, and a witness who was brave enough to write it all down before anyone would believe her." Director Park opened his mouth to protest, but the room had already turned against him, the board members' faces hardening as they flipped through the evidence Minho passed around. "Get him out of my building," Minho said, and this time his voice didn't shake with rage. It was calm, certain. Security escorted Director Park out in the same silence that had followed Hana out 3 nights earlier, and Minho felt the full, uncomfortable weight of the parallel. After the board filed out, he asked one more person to stay. Hana stood by the door in a new uniform. Not the cleaning staff gray, but something else entirely. A visitor badge clipped to her blazer that read Kim Hana, Special Advisor to the CEO. "I looked into your file," Minho said. "The shelter, the night classes you take on your own time, the kids you teach sign language to for free. And I looked into the accident." He paused, watching her carefully. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, but I want you to know I know what you gave up and why, and I will never treat what's left of your voice like it doesn't matter again." Hana's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. She lifted her notepad one final time. "I never needed you to hear my voice. I needed you to see me." Minho crossed the room and for the first time since the night he'd fired her, offered his hand, not as her boss, but as an equal. "Then let's make sure everyone sees you now." She took it. If this story hit you right in the heart, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more Heartline stories, and drop a comment telling me which moment made you feel it most. Because this is only the beginning of what Minho and Hana build together next.